We are at St. Pius for the Archive Project, talking to Monsignor Marcaccio about the Knights of Malta. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us.
Oh, Luke, I'm happy to. The order is very important to me and to our Church Universal. Started a long time ago in the 11th century, and really started out as a hospitaller order. You know, what does that mean? If you think of a hospice or hospital, that was the root of it. And they took over a hospital of St. John that was in Jerusalem. And what they were doing was they were caring for the pilgrims that had come. And most of them, by the time they had gotten there, were just, devastated. And the trip was, very laborious, and a lot of them were sick. And so what they would do is they would care for them. And so this group formed to care for them. And then eventually, it gets approval through our founder, we would say our founder, who was Blessed Gerard. And he was a knight and a monk. And they take care of the pilgrims. But then what they started to do was to take care of the routes that the pilgrims took. And so it took on not just a dimension of caring for the sick, but also of a military function of protecting them and the pilgrims. And so it is the first order that is of a religious order that has a military and, if you will, of knighthood. And so it's a unique thing. In fact, it's the first order of knighthood. So like the Templars, you've maybe heard the Knights of the Temple, and there were some other groups. They came after the Knights of Malta. So originally it was founded to help the sick and the poor, and then kind of got into protecting them from marauders, from the Turks at the time, and from really, the devastation that it was, the trip and going through such a dangerous territory.
Awesome. Well, I think we're going to get into some questions.
Okay.
I'm Neil, and we're here with Monsignor today, and I would just like to know how has the Knights of Malta changed over the years?
That's a great question, Neil, because as I said, it started helping, the poor and the sick, and that's always been one of the hallmarks of the order. So there's two things: to care for the sick and the poor, and to see Jesus Christ hidden in the poor and the sick, particularly. And one of the rules was to serve them white bread on silver plate. So what does that mean? Now, that doesn't sound like much to us, but it was a huge thing to them because the people of the time ate very coarse bread. And so these people, a lot of times, they were at the point of dying, and they would nurture them back with like the best of what they had. And the knights would go out into the field, or they'd be out into the battle, and they would come back, and the first thing they would do was they would serve the poor. They would feed the poor and care for their wounds before they even cared for themselves. And so they ran these hospitals. A lot of times they were more like a hospice kind of situation. Yeah. But over the years, they develop, they learn, especially from like the Turks and things, advances in medicine, and their hospitals become quite successful. Eventually, they have schools of medicine, particularly on the island of Malta. They had schools of anatomy and medicine. And to this day, if you go to Europe particularly, you'll see ambulance services that have the Maltese cross on them. So it's always to be concerned about the sick and the poor, but there were times, particularly as the Turks invaded the Holy Land, and we were on a defensive war against them, they took up arms to defend Christianity in these areas. And so, I mean, everybody in America understands the Alamo, like the last stand of the Alamo. There were several battles in which the Knights of Malta had these like last stands for Christianity. One of them was Lepanto. The Knights of Malta were very involved in that battle, which was the last of the big galley ships, with the big, oars rowing. Yeah. And so it was almost like wooden castle ships that would collide with each other, and there'd be horrific, warfare on them. And the Knights of Malta were involved with that. And then the other thing that they were involved with was some of the knights were instrumental at Vienna when the Turks were coming, and they were at the gates of Vienna. And so we were saying it has a twofold function. The knights have a twofold function. One is to defend the faith and serve the poor. And so the serving the poor typically happens through their care for the sick. And so that continues to the day, but in ancient times it was through hospitals in which they often learned, even from the Turks and from the Arabs, medicine, and they developed schools of medicine on the island of Malta. But over the years, it definitely had a military focus, and it was necessary to keep the Turks, at that time that's what they were called, the Muslim advance, in check. And so famous battles of Lepanto, which is the feast of Our Lady of Rosary, Our Lady of the Rosary surrounded that, where the Pope asked for prayers. And there's a huge, I think in fact it was the last of the big naval battles fought by galley ships. And so the knights were involved in that. And then the Muslims, the Turks, had come all the way to the gates of Vienna. Now that's incredible if you think about it. Here they are all the way into Europe, and the Holy Roman Emperor would have been begging them to help. And so one of the Knights of Malta comes down from Poland and actually leads this counter against them and keeps them at check. And so truly, if it was not for some of these, if you will, Alamo kind of experiences for Christianity, the Western civilization might be Muslim right now. And it's something to consider. So they are sent when Charles V, who was the emperor at the time, gives them a choice of two places to go to. This is some time ago in the Middle Ages. They can go to Tripoli or to Malta. And like Tripoli, which would be northern Africa, like from the the Muslims. We talk about the Muslim pirates and that from the shores of Tripoli in the Marine Hymn, or Malta. Nobody wanted to go to Tripoli, so it's like, thanks a lot. So they go to Malta, which was just this rock in the middle of the Mediterranean. And what you have to remember is the Mediterranean was where the commerce happened. And so they had heard of the New World. There was all this, excitement about what was happening out there with some of the Portuguese and the Spanish exploration that was going on. But really it was the Mediterranean that commerce was the focus of. And so they end up on Malta. They fortify the island of Malta. And there are several sieges that are significant there. Eventually, it's only during Napoleon's time that they are defeated and they basically lose that territory. But it is a sovereign order. So what does that mean? So His Highness is the Grand Master, His Eminent Highness the Grand Master, is treated as a king. So he takes religious vows. In the early days they took religious vows of celibacy, of poverty, and obedience. And all of the membership was taken from the noble orders. So you had to have a pedigree of nobility in order to be a knight. So some of them were extremely wealthy, and the order had extreme wealth, which they used to serve the poor and to defend the faith. And so the Grand Master, who exists even to this day, was operating, if you will, a large military group that also was doing very socially minded works of charity. And to this day, he is treated as a sovereign. And so they have a territory in Rome, which is, like if you could understand, it would be almost like an embassy. That is, sovereign to the order. We issue passports. We have diplomatic relations with countries. And so the Grand Master is able sometimes to go into certain countries through the Order of Malta where maybe our country cannot. And it helps us tremendously with information and with aid. Because the Order of Malta, for instance, was helping some of the Cubans before we could have that kind of relationship as a nation state in the United States. And so we were able to help Cubans that had nothing, living very difficult lives, to bring them health care and just a humane response. But that's true for different parts of the world. So yes, there are social, spiritual, and no longer military aspects to the order. So we defend the faith, not with a sword, but through the pen and through educating the faithful. And the service continues through hospitals, some senior living facilities, taking care of the poor, however it manifests, from, like I said, ambulance services, EMTs, to nursing facilities, and it's a vast array of works of mercy. But the idea is that these works of mercy come from that twofold thing of defending the faith and serving Christ hidden in the poor from our very beginning. And so in America, we don't have the pedigree that is required in Europe. Literally, if you go to Europe and you see a lot of paintings, you'll notice that they have a cross on. You'll see that a lot of the kings will be wearing a cross, an 8-pointed white cross. Once you become aware of it, you'll see it in a lot of them. And they were members of the order. In America, because we don't have a system of that, our nobility comes through service. And so typically members are chosen because of their contributions to the life of the church and to their community. So these are people that are known to their pastors, known to the people of God for all the good things that they've done.
Thank you. Monsignor, you mentioned the cross of the Maltese cross. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, the Maltese cross, which we obviously affiliate with the Order of Malta, but also with Malta itself. It's their emblem, and now was affiliated with the order because that was the cross that they wear on their tunics. They have a religious habit, so it's a religious order, so it's a religious habit that they wear. It's called a scapular, and it goes over their shoulders like scapular, like your bone there, right? And so in a religious order, they wear scapulars, and so the one for the Knights of Malta and for the Dames of Malta, they wear it over their heart, is the 8-pointed white cross. Of course, the cross being white stands for purity, and that we have pure intentions, and then the 8 points stand for the Beatitudes, because we believe that to be a knight or a dame of Malta is to be a citizen of this kingdom here on earth, but with our eyes fixed on the kingdom that is to come. And when Jesus preaches the kingdom, he preaches that on the Sermon on the Mount. And what does he give us but the Beatitudes? And so those are the attitudes of the Beatitudes. Those are the things that we are to embrace in our spirituality as a religious community. And so while once again, it seems like, its history is very illustrious militarily, but, it's a spiritual endeavor. So that when somebody makes a promise in the order, they're taking a religious promise. I am not a member of the order, I'm a chaplain to the order, okay? The priests are not members of the order, they're chaplains to this order, so they can live out the Beatitudes. So all those things that we have in the Beatitudes, that's what those 8 points are. And that's how the spirituality of the Knights is lived in action. Interior attitudes manifested in good works. Our faith lived in love. And so for me, and for I think so many of the members of the order, this is the framework upon which we live our Christian vocation, no matter what it may be. And we have doctors and nurses and professional people, obviously, and others, but it gives us a framework to live the Christian spirituality, to live the kingdom, and to make it come. Not us, but Christ. It comes through Christ, and we're happy to participate in the building of it.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Matt, we're here with Monsignor. Just the last thing we wanted to discuss with him was about the trips to Lourdes that you take every year.
Absolutely. One of the highlights of my year is going to Our Lady Shrine in France, where Bernadette had the Blessed Mother appear to her and reveal eventually that she was the Immaculate Conception, and ask Bernadette to dig in this miserable place, and a spring came up of water. And from that time, there's been a lot of healing that has happened there. And our previous Grand Master, Fra Bertie, of happy memory, he had a great devotion to Our Lady, and there was a pilgrimage there that he would participate in. And eventually he grew the pilgrimage for the order, and more of the nations came. And so now it is huge. It is huge. You know, tens of thousands of people from the order, not to mention the, you know, million people that might come on an annual basis to Our Lady's Shrine, but tens of thousands of knights and dames and their companions and the Malads will come to Our Lady's Shrine, usually that first week in May, to pray for them and to ask our Lord to heal them through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, because that goes with our work, which is to see Christ hidden in the poor and the sick, and to bring them healing. And so, Lourdes is a fantastic shrine. It's like, it's so, and it's kind of commercial on the outside, but then once you enter what we call the domain, very, very cool, because it's like getting a glimpse of the kingdom, because those who might be last are suddenly elevated to first. And so there are people, once again in Europe, the order is usually, a lot of them have a pedigree of nobility. You know, but here in America, I mean, I'm trying to think of guys like the, you know, some of the governors of our states that are knights and dames. Let's see, coach, Vince Dooley is a Knight of Malta. Okay, he was a famous, you know, coach at the University of Georgia. So there you see them ministering to these folks that are sometimes extremely troubled. Now for us, our pilgrims have to be able to make that flight, you know, from America to France, which is a kind of a grueling thing. But some of the ones in Europe, they'll bring them on hospital trains. And there are people that will come, we pray, we ask the Lord to bless them. And the other thing is that they're just spoiled. You know, we just spoil them. It's kind of like, almost like Make-A-Wish, whatever they want. And so what's really neat is that sometimes they're able to forget, at least for maybe a week, you know, the circumstances that they are in, and enjoy that blessing of fellowship where, you know, where it's normal, and it's fine, and they feel the love and the care of so many people. And so we've been very fortunate as a group here in Central North Carolina to have several folks go, as we call them Malads, our Lords, the Malads. And that sounds kind of funny, but Malad is just a word like malady, like to mean the sick. So our Lord's the sick, because from the very beginning we see Christ hidden in the sick. That's where he says he'll be. He says, you know, when did we see you, you know, lonely or naked, or, you know, he says, you know, whatever you did to the least of the brethren, you did to me. And so they will, at that time, in that pilgrimage, look for Christ hidden in the poor and the sick. And usually is a transformative experience for them, and I would say also for the knights and dames, to have direct contact with people. And, you know, I have met somebody who, there are two ladies that I have met. One who is very quiet about what happened there, and has debated whether or not to be one of the documented cases. And then there's another case of a lady who was cured there, and there's like a little technicality, but the number of cures at Lourdes are not as many as you might think, the official documented ones, but the undocumented cases, the stories of healing, of peace of mind, people that are able to embrace God's will, people that are just so encouraged by the visit, those are numerous. Those are so numerous, and certainly been the case with the folks that we've brought from this area, from our region here in Central North Carolina. So the pilgrims come and they're able to experience Our Lady's Shrine and the blessing that is there with the baths, but also just to know that they're cared for and loved. We support also their caregivers, and some of these folks are caring for people 24/7, so it really gives them a break too. But to know that their hope may be strengthened, and that people care genuinely, and that they can see Christ in each other, and you know, that's just critical. It makes all the difference in the world. It really helps to make sense out of suffering, and that comfort, that compassion, that care is one of the hallmarks of the order, because it's a hallmark of Jesus Christ. And so I'm very happy to be affiliated with people of such quality of character, that I know that I'm better because of them. you know, our church is better and they become better. You know, if you wanna improve in life, you hang around people that are better than yourselves. You hang around good people. And so the fraternity that they experience as this faithful religious order, you know, dedicated to service, to promoting the faith, makes them stronger, makes our church stronger, and makes our society much, much better.
Yeah, thank you so much, Monsignor.
So one of the things that you need to know is, you know, when you're talking about the Order of Malta, you know folks that are in the Order of Malta, either in Winston or in Greensboro and in High Point, and you even know one of your students has been with us on the pilgrimage as a volunteer, and nothing explains, nothing describes like being there in person. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, we'll be able to expand that, and you know, you get to know some of these folks. Maybe one day go to this shrine, which is in the middle of the mountains in the Pyrenees. It's gorgeous, very remote, but the Lord, you know, spoke to Bernadette there. As I think He's speaking to all of us, you know, and to grow in holiness. And so that's what the order's about. It's an avenue towards holiness with a venerable history. But it's not just a historic thing, and it's not just some award for, you know, here's your medal for, you know, for the, no. It's service. It's something, it's a commitment to serve. Not for what you've done previously, but for what you hope to accomplish for the sake of the church, for the mission, the church which is spread the good news of Jesus Christ, and always for the glory of God. And so I know that your motto is, I think, to excel in order to serve.
Yeah.
And so it really fits very much to me, with the Order of Malta. These are excellent people in every field. They are excellent in their fields, and of excellent upbringing, excellent morals, excellent. And why are they excellent? To exceed and to excel in order to serve. And so I think that's a great connection to you and the bishop.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
All right. See you guys. Glad to see you.
Good to see you.
Take the rest of the day off.